So, as everybody knows, we had an officer shot this morning responding to a domestic disturbance. As he rode the elevator up and arrived to the floor, the doors opened and the offender immediately began firing upon the officer in an assassination attempt. There's no other way to describe it. Thankfully, nothing major was struck and the officer is expected to make a full recovery. I did talk to him this morning and his wife. He's as in good of spirits as can be expected, considering. Just grateful that it wasn't worse. But we really need to address part of the root cause of this attack on law enforcement and its origins. This needs to be laid right at the doorstep of the mayor. The mayor, from day one in office, blamed the police department for everything you could possibly imagine. From the Bobby Rush popcorn nonsense to George Floyd and everything else from there on out. There has been no defense, at least tangible defense, of law enforcement from the fifth floor of City Hall. There's a lot of platitudes and kind words that are being spoken at press conferences now about police and the sacrifices they make. She wouldn't know the first thing about it. It's all smoke and mirrors and bullshit. It's just a political ploy to try and show that she supports the men and women of the police department. But I assure you, if you ask any officer, especially those who are being attacked, shot, or the family members of those officers, they want the mayor nowhere near the hospital. Yes, today was just yet another example of very clear messaging that these officers do not want the mayor to use their experience for any political fodder. They do not want her to come visit them. They do not want her in the hospital. They do not want her speaking about them. Same goes for the superintendent. It's not a message they want to acknowledge, but it is occurring because I witness it every single time. And I'm not speaking out of school because I get to speak to these officers. And without exception, it's pretty much across the board. We don't want them anywhere near us. You can speak on our behalf. Today was another example. The department was told the officer was not giving any consent for his medical condition to be disseminated by the police department. What does that tell you? There is no respect for this leadership. Superintendent Brown needs to be removed from office as soon as possible if there's any department to be salvaged in the next 7 months until the mayor is replaced. We all know the chances of that happening. She is never going to admit that she has been wrong with this appointment, that he has been a disaster from the beginning. So I guess we'll hold our breath and see what happens. But it's a pathetic excuse. And then the mayor today to talk about domestic violence as if the domestic violence was the cause of this violent behavior, shooting our officers yet again. That was just the reason why he was there. It had nothing to do with why this officer was shot, but it's all distraction from the reality that our officers are under attack. You can go to Superintendent Brown's press conference for the carjacker who was shot, the 13-year-old carjacker who was shot on the west side. Superintendent Brown clearly stated, I am not going to give any defense for this officer's actions. That's his job to do, not mine. Bullshit again. It is your job to lay down a narrative of why these officers do what they do. You can sit there and talk about how bravely they respond and how the 4th of July weekend they will be out there covering all of these posts that you guys have created. Well, the only reason many of them are going is because they're forced, because you're canceling their days off yet again, taking away yet another 4th of July holiday from our officers, from their family. No matter how many years of service, they now cannot expect any holiday time with their families. That's not a normal job. That's never the way it's been, but the only reason it is because the people running this department are allowing it to happen and carry the water for this mayor. It's not having any effect in these shootings. Yet another mass shooting downtown Chicago, the pride and jewel. But the mayor is going to sit there and talk at a press conference this afternoon about how people love Chicago. It's the best city they ever visited. Well, I don't know what crack she's smoking, but this city has never been more violent. Downtown has never been more violent. And if it was such a beautiful city, then why are all these resources being deployed downtown every weekend? every holiday, it's because they know it's a lost cause. Look at the Pride Parade just last weekend. Every year after Pride Parade ends, it is a shit show in downtown Chicago. Never fails. And it didn't disappoint, and it even exceeded expectations again this year. Officers being punched, thrown at, humiliated by people in the crowd, not to mention 3 people shot and 3 people stabbed in 2 separate incidents. They shut down the Southside Irish Parade for a tenth of that kind of behavior that persisted year after year after year, and that was just drunken silliness. This is actually violent behavior that occurs every year, but no one wants to call it out. God forbid you should say anything about the Pride Parade, because now you're homophobic, you're whatever the case may be. It'll come. But until people learn to force their behaviors to change, whether it's incarceration or something else, this is not going to stop. We're going to certainly keep pushing. I will tell you, the arbitrator, when it comes to the 10 days in a row, did not rule in our favor. This is yet another example of a coward arbitration ruling, and it is actually contradictory language that now they can use historical data, even though the arbitrator in his ruling cited the basically agreement and the historical arrival to where we got at the end, where we wanted historical data removed from the language in the agreement in paragraph 9. And he even cites that historical perspective where we had it removed from the city's first draft proposal. But then in his final thing, he says, well, because there was no clarity that it can be used. Well, the clarity was that it was removed because we didn't want historical data to be used or considered, because the city has played games, and Eric Carter, in his testimony at that arbitration, talked about historical data. Well, we can use anything for historical data if that's the case. The 7th anniversary of some person getting shot, some rapper getting shot, is now going to be the reason for canceling days off. Inexcusable. We're certainly not letting it rest there. There will be a follow-up hearing to the language in that agreement with the arbitrator over Father's Day weekend, which already passed, and now 4th of July, which is occurring right now, and these cancellations yet again. The city's excuse for the historical data was COVID was just going away, and the city had all of these functions that needed security. Well, the argument was these are functions the city could cancel. They don't have to have these functions en masse that require hundreds of officers to cover all over the city, because we don't have hundreds of officers to spare. But all I can tell you is we will be out this weekend with your cancellations. We will be canceled also, and we will be out at headquarters for deployment on Sunday, and more than likely the 18th district on Monday. We'll see you then.